is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
Welcome to this special edition of Houston Newsmakers, where we are beginning this show with a very special guest, the mayor of the city of Houston. Mayor, congratulations on winning the election.
Thank you very much.
Starting your final four-year term.
Thanks.
How does that sound? Final four-year term.
Oh, it feels. No, one. I'm excited. I'm pumped up. I certainly want to thank the Houston voters, number one, just for participating in the political process, especially in the runoff, close to the holiday season.
Right.
And then I appreciate Houstonians for giving me the opportunity to continue to serve them for another 4 years.
It was a contentious race at some points. Tony Buzbee spent a lot of money trying to beat you. What do you most look at the election and are glad to see it in your rearview mirror?
Well, I'm glad to see that it's over. That's number one. Where we can really focus on the things that matter most to Houstonians. Wanted to make sure that we work to continue to build a good, sustainable, resilient city, especially as it relates to mitigating the risk of flooding, infrastructure. We want to certainly tackle our bad streets in a more systematic way, public safety, building up all of our communities and neighborhoods. But for me, I guess the takeaway in this campaign, or one of the takeaways, and it's a message to our kids across the city, especially for children that coming from communities that have been underserved and under-resourced. And that is, you don't have to live in a world where you have as much money as somebody else, or you don't have to come live in a house that's as big as someone else, or drive a car that is fancy as someone, but you can still be in the same race and compete in the same race, and you can win, okay? And it's how you run your race that's very, very important. And you don't have to tear down, when you compete, tear down anybody else in order to do well and compete and win. And that's the takeaway. That's the message that I especially want all of our kids to get. Look, I was born and reared in the hood, born and reared and still live in the hood. And yet today on your show, I am the mayor of the fourth largest city in the United States of America.
During the campaign, there were a lot of charges leveled toward you and your administration for cronyism and other kinds of things like that, and different things that were suggested that could be done better. Was there anything that came up during the campaign that you might have said, I can do this better? Anything from that?
I think the charges that were leveled for me and people who have traveled down the similar road that I have, similar backgrounds, stereotypical, there was the accusations that come, corrupt, all of those sort of negative sort of deals, playing to stereotypes, And, there are things that not only I have faced, in my lifetime, others like me have faced in our lifetime. But the good news for me and for Houstonians and others, Cambrell, is that we live in a time that people can see through those sort of statements where people try to stereotype people based on their group affiliation, so to speak. People can see through that there are good people that live in our city and in other cities who will judge you by your actions and by your service. And in this city, people have seen me and close up and in person under some difficult circumstances, and so they dismiss those type of general sort of allegations or negative stereotypes. And so I sit before you this morning, feeling quite good about the city in which we live and the people in this city and the voters in this city.
So now that you have this next 4 years in front of you, what are you setting now up as your biggest priorities starting out in this new year?
Mitigating the risk of flooding. Storms are coming with greater frequency and intensity, and so we have to be very intentional and mitigating the risk of flooding. I'm very pleased to say to Houstonians, 3 of the 4 top major infrastructure projects for flooding have been approved by the federal government and fully funded. So, for example, Kingwood, the 10 spillway gates, moving forward. The major detention basin in Northwest Houston at the Inwood Golf Course, 229 acres, will hold more water than the Astrodome, approved, fully funded. The North Canal project, where Buffalo Bayou and White Oak converge, that would benefit the Heights area, the downtown, the Ada District area. The largest stormwater project in the state of Texas, $131 million, approved, fully funded. All 3 of these projects are scheduled to be built in the next 3 to 4 years. And then we have doubled the number of stormwater projects in every city council member districts. We purchased, for example, the old Shell research facility in that Westbury community. That's been their #1 project since 2012, 2013. That will add more detention to the Willow Water Hole in Southwest Houston. And that's, we're moving forward with that.
So you've heard a lot from people about that being one of the issues that they're most concerned about.
Absolutely. We had the ceremonial closing out at Willow Water Hole, for example, in Southwest Houston. And then at the same time, in West Houston, we're working on our 4th major project to mitigate the risk of flooding, a detention basin, and hopefully that project fairly soon will be approved by the federal government as well and will be fully funded. So that's a top priority, getting people back in their homes from Hurricane Harvey, repairing and reconstructing. That's important.
How's that going in terms of numbers of people? What do the numbers look like in terms of how many people still need help and where do we stand?
There's still literally thousands of people. So that project, we'll be dealing with that for the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, it's just a massive program. And so you want to move with as much urgency and as quickly as you can, navigating through the state and the federal government requirements in repairing and reconstructing people's homes. So we've been very, very intentional on that. Public safety, we've added over 200 police officers, netted since I've been mayor, but we need about 600 more. So public safety will always be a top priority. We've got bad streets. And so we're looking at putting forth a systematic program, strategy to repair and rebuild these roads based on the funding that we have. So that's important.
I'm looking forward to driving on smoother streets. That's a good thing.
It's going to take time. You got 16,000 miles of roads and streets in the city of Houston, and the problem has occurred, lack of maintenance over decades. So it's going to take time. But I think what people want to know is there a systematic program in place where you've identified the worst streets, that they know where you're working on these streets, the criteria for selection, and at what point in time can you give us some idea of if we click on this street, we'll start working on this street. And I think that's what people want to know.
Well, Mayor, I thank you for sitting down with me. We're going to continue our conversation with you coming up. I'm going to talk about, we've got a brand new council ahead. How are you going to work with them going forward? More on this edition of Houston Newsmakers right after this break.